In Module 8, we're going to be looking at creating a form-based report for General Report Writer 2.21. So what do we mean by a form-based report? If you go and open up the reports demo application that was provided with the installation of the report writer, and we go down and look at designs, one of the report designs that we have is a report called the order stock.4rp. Underneath the order stock.4rp, if we look, we see that we have a form, and it's on this form that fields have been placed. If I go ahead and execute my application, and I select order stock and output to SVG, you can see that it is providing a report that is sitting on top of a form. The basics of creating a form-based report is to first place an image of that form on the report and then position your objects onto that image. After this instruction, you're going to be able to add an image of a form to the report, use specific positioning to add data values and report objects to a report, and then work effectively with your attachment points. If you've been following these training videos in order, you by now are familiar with absolute versus relative positioning. Absolute positioning is when you're placing the object on a specific position on the report, while relative positioning, or dynamic layouting, is where the X and Y coordinates are not defined and the object is placed relative to its siblings. When you're dealing with a form-based report, you're going to be doing absolute positioning. And since the form is visible inside of the main work area, you're going to be dragging and dropping your report items directly onto the report. You probably won't be defining the X and Y coordinates through the property panels. You'll be using the work area and the mouse to position your report objects appropriately. So what are the steps to creating your form-based report? The first thing you want to do is you want to add the form image to the report. So you'll go ahead and scan your form, save it as an image, and then inside of your report designer, you're going to start with a page root and add an image box as a child of that page root. You'll add the image box using dynamic layouting. That means you're going to hold the control key down while you drag the image box and drop it onto the report. You're then going to change the location property of the image box to specify the path and the file name of the image. And if the form is a full page form, you'll change the X size and the Y size property to max. You can either do this through the properties panel, or you can right click on the image box and use the contextual menu to set both the width and the height to maximize. So what about integrating the report triggers and the image box and page root in the report structure? It really depends upon what the form is trying to display. In general, the image box is going to be a child of the page root, and then the data values and the report objects are going to be children of the image box. But of course, it can vary upon what your report or what your form is trying to capture. In the first example that we have up here, a form called order invoice.4rp, we have our page root underneath the order num, we have our image underneath the page root, and then we're placing the items down. What this is telling me is that the order num is going to be the breaking point to start a new form, and that means that the on every row, which is further down in this view, is going to contain multiple rows relating to one order. So the fact that my page root is under the order num means I'm going to have one form report containing information about an order, but that information may be streaming across several rows. In the second example, I have the image as a child of on every row. What this is telling me is that for each new page, I'm going to have just a single row's worth of data being placed out there on the form. When it's time to add the data values or your report objects to the form that's being displayed inside of your report designer, what you should do is select the image box and then just use drag and drop to position the data values and the report objects onto the report. You're not holding down the control key, you're just dragging and dropping and placing onto the report. You'll know it's specific layouting because you'll see the red attachment point, and if you go and look at the properties, you'll see that both the X and the Y property are set according to where you've dropped it off onto the form. Once you've placed the item onto the form, you may need to resize the item to fit into the spaces allowed on the form. To resize, you're going to drag and drop according to the control handles on the object itself. Now, if you select the object and you see that it has only 4 points, that means that the resize is going to be proportional. If you drag it out to extend the width, it will then increase the height proportionally. If you just want to drag it one direction without it changing the other direction, you need to click on that object a second time so that it has 8 attachment points. And then whichever you drag and drop, it will resize accordingly. So again, click on the object to change it between 4 anchors or 8 anchors. Now the default location of an attachment point, the attachment point being that point that specifies exactly where this X and Y axis are attaching this object to your report. The attachment point location is default is going to depend upon the data type. Numerics have the attachment point on the right side, while non-numerics have an attachment point on the left side. To reposition, we've already shown you that you can go in and change the anchor X and the anchor Y to move this attachment point around the object itself. I can just click on the attachment point and then use it and drag it to where I want it to be on this object. Alternatively, you can move the attachment point by clicking the attachment point until it turns white, and then move it from anchor to anchor by using the Control plus arrow key. And those are the basics for creating a form-based report. So again, you're going to put an image onto your page root. You're going to then drag and drop your data items and your report items onto your form. You'll position it within the report hierarchy, and then you can do sizing of your objects or change the attachment point as needed in order to ensure that the fields fit into the spaces provided on the form. Now, for a demonstration of this, I encourage you to go and view the lab exercise for Module 8, where it'll take you through the process of creating a form-based report and populating it with the data fields.